one of the most important saints in our church history. Ignatius was born in the ancestral castle of the Loyolas in the Basque province of Spain. The youngest son of a noble and wealthy family, Ignatius became in 1506 a page in the service of a relative who was the treasurer of the Kingdom of Castile. In 1517, Ignatius became a knight in the service of another relative who employed him in military undertakings and on a diplomatic mission. While defending the city against the French, Ignatius was hit by a cannonball and sustained a bad fracture of his right leg and damage to his left. This event closed the first period of his life, during which he was, by his own admission, a man given to the vanities of the world. Although his morals were far from stainless, Ignatius was in his early years a proud rather than sensual man. He stood just under 5 feet 2 in height. Thank you. And had in his youth an abundance of hair of a reddish tint. He delighted in music, especially sacred hymns. After treatment for his wounds, he was transported back to Loyola in 1521. There his condition became so serious that for a time it was thought he would die. When out of danger, he chose to undergo painful surgery to correct mistakes that were made when his leg bone was first set. The result was a convalescence of many weeks, during which he read a life of Christ and a book on the lives of the saints. The version of the lives of the saints he was reading profoundly moved and attracted him. After much reflection, he resolved to imitate the holiness of the saints in order to do penance for his sins. In February 1522, he said goodbye to his family and went to Montserrat, a place of pilgrimage in northeastern Spain. He spent 3 days confessing his sins, hung his sword and dagger near the statue of the Virgin Mary as symbols of his abandoned ambitions, and clothed in sackcloth, spent the night of March 24th in prayer. The next day he went to Manresa, a town 30 miles from Barcelona, where he lived as a beggar, ate and drank sparingly, scourged himself, and for a time neither combed nor trimmed his hair and did not cut his nails. Daily he attended Mass and spent 7 hours in prayer, often in a cave outside Manresa. At Manresa, he sketched the fundamentals of his little book, The Spiritual Exercises, a manual outlining a manner of spirituality. Ignatius used it to give spiritual retreats to others, especially those who were following him. The remainder of this period was devoted to a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. He traveled by way of Rome, Venice, and Cyprus, and reached Jerusalem on September 4th. He would like to have settled there permanently, but the Franciscan custodians of the shrines would not accept him, so he decided to return to Spain. Ignatius describes his decision to acquire as good an education as the circumstances permitted. He probably could have reached the priesthood in a few years, but he chose to defer this goal for more than 12 years and to undergo the drudgery of the classroom at an age when most men have long since finished their education. Perhaps his military career had taught him the value of careful preparation. At any rate, he was convinced that a well-trained man would accomplish in a short time what one without training would never accomplish. He studied at Barcelona for 2 years. By the time he had acquired followers in the little group, they had assumed a distinctive clothing. But Ignatius soon fell under suspicion of heresy and was imprisoned and tried. He won acquittal, but was forbidden to teach until he had finished his studies. Ignatius and most of his companions were ordained in 1537. There followed 18 months during which they acquired experience in the ministry while devoting much time to prayer. 2 years later, he and his companions decided to form a permanent order with vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. He was the choice of his companions for the office The Society of Jesus developed rapidly under his leadership. When he died, there were about 1,000 Jesuits divided into 12 administrative units called provinces, 3 in Italy, 3 in Spain, 2 in Germany, 1 in France, 1 in Portugal, and 2 overseas in India and Brazil. Loyola was in his last years much occupied with Germany and India, to which he sent his famous followers, Peter Canisius and Francis Xavier. He also dispatched missionaries to the Congo region and to Ethiopia. Loyola also left his mark on Rome. He founded the Roman College, which would later become the Gregorian University. He also established a home for fallen women and one for converted Jews. The Society of Jesus was to be above all an order of apostles, quote, ready to live in any part of the world where there was hope of God's greater glory and the good of souls. It was at his insistence that those men interested in joining the society should undergo a long training period. The special vow of obedience to the Pope was called by Loyola the cause and principal foundation of his society. While general of the order, Loyola was frequently sick. In January 1551, he became so ill that he begged his associates to accept his resignation. Despite his condition, though, he continued to direct the order until his death in July 1556. Ignatius Loyola was canonized in 1622. In 1922, he was declared patron of all spiritual retreats and soldiers by Pope Pius XI. His achievements and those of his followers form a chapter in the history of the Church that cannot be neglected. Today, the Society of Jesus has over 16,000 members, priests and brothers, who are engaged in ministry in 112 nations on 6 continents. Jesuits work in education, founding schools, colleges, universities, and seminaries, intellectual research, and cultural pursuits. Worldwide, the Jesuits operate 322 secondary schools and 172 colleges and universities. Notable Jesuits include missionaries, educators, scientists, artists, philosophers, and Pope Francis. Among many distinguished early Jesuits was Francis Xavier, a missionary to Asia who converted more people to Catholicism than anyone before him. Robert Bellarmine, a doctor of the Church. Manuel de Nobrega, who founded the city of São Paulo, Brazil. More famous Jesuits were Isaac Job and Jean de Brebeuf, French missionaries who brought the faith to North America. And in our time, Avery Dulles, a Jesuit theologian and writer, served as a cardinal in the United States. It's hard to overestimate the contribution of Ignatius Loyola made to our church. Through difficult and often challenging times, his community has endured and has become one of the most effective vehicles for evangelization, introducing people to the person of Christ through their ministry and teaching. The Ignatian retreat, or spiritual exercises, continues to be the most popular retreat